Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss the government's threats to leave the EU without further talks if they don't get their lollipops. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, Michael Gove, one of the Tory ministers both then and now that organised the campaign to persuade people to leave the EU, stood up in Parliament on Thursday and made the pitch that has been demonstrated to be so utterly impotent and inept over the past few years of Brexit wrangling. He said that if it were not clear by June that the UK was going to get its Canada deal, you know, the thing that the EU have already said no to, that they should consider completely ditching the talks with the EU, cancelling them, walking away from the table. He said that the UK wanted compromise, but would not align itself with any EU standards, even those it pretends to support. Not quite sure where the compromise is there. The government also published what was supposed to be its proposals for an EU deal, but in fact were just a list of things it wanted without any details on how they would be achieved. As such, they were not actually proposals at all. To be fair, the document, which I've linked below if you want to read it yourself, doesn't actually profess to be proposals. But the bottom line is that in this regard, nothing has changed from a couple of days ago when I was bemoaning the fact that the EU had a proposal, but that we didn't. We still don't. So back to that notion of cancelling trade talks with the EU in June. What does that mean exactly? Does it mean that we then just see out the final 6 months of transition period and then crash out without a deal? Or does it mean that we end the transition period at that point and crash out without a deal this summer? Gove also said that he wanted the UK to be able to set its own state aid policies and not be bound by the EU's. Of course, leaving without a deal means we'll still be bound by the WTO state aid rules, so we still won't be able to do it independently. There is literally no way to decide these policies as an independent nation. It should be obvious, really. International trade is just that, between nations. As such, no individual nation gets to decide rules that would affect other nations entirely on its own. The ones who get to be the closest in doing so are the ones who form the supermassive economies, whether this be like the US, which is massive enough to do it on its own, or like the European powers who chose to form a union to be able to do the same thing. Wet little islands full of sheep and sheeple don't really get to do this. We are no longer allowed to go around the world sticking flags in people's land and saying it's ours. So we're a bit screwed there. So what are my thoughts on the various permutations which can take place now? I'm actually fairly pleased with all possible outcomes here in a perverse sort of way. So let's consider what could happen now. Scenario 1. So the EU refused to grant the UK this mystery deal, which the UK haven't even bothered to write down in detail, and we arrive at June with no progress made in this regard. Now, that isn't the scenario itself because that is certain either way. The government has now threatened to abandon the talks altogether at this point. So, instead of waiting until December for the government to realise it can't possibly back up its tough talking, they will have painted themselves into the corner for June. Because if the talks are abandoned in June, then panic will be let loose in the UK economy. We saw a taste of this when the announcement was made. As soon as the announcement was made, it led to a sharp drop in the value of the pound. As happens every time they make an announcement that makes no deal more likely. On a side note, this has prompted some people to ask how many financial pirate friends of Boris Johnson and Michael Gove knew of this announcement in advance for the purposes of making a killing shorting the pound. But anyway, in this scenario, we'll be seeing some of the effects of a no-deal Brexit before it even happens. Every industry in the country will do its nut. More companies will move offices or even entire productions to the EU. If we thought that a lot of this was happening in 2019, wait until this year. Then there's the second scenario. So the same sort of thing. We get to June. The government goes, oh, where's our deal? The EU goes, you're not having the one you've asked for. It's ludicrous. And then the government don't cancel the talks. Well, this time their tough talking has been exposed and faced down. People will breathe a sigh of relief, of course, that the government aren't quite as crazy as they're trying to give the impression of. And we will be thinking, they may not, but we will be thinking, oh, maybe they'll extend the transition period as well. We'll calm down a little bit. What will most certainly happen is that the government will not be able to make any more credible threats about pulling the plug on talks. even though I'm still sure they will want a no-deal Brexit. I'm still sure we'll go over the cliff edge at the end of the year. But no one will believe their threats because, well, they keep backing down at the 11th hour. So they've boxed themselves into a corner. And I was there thinking that they'll be able to carry on talking tough all the way to the end of the year, whereas now they've left themselves, in June, something's got to happen. Either they do what they say and walk away from the talks and then the whole country will do its nut, or they won't walk away, in which case everyone will go, you said you were going to walk away, why haven't you walked away? But then what if a third scenario emerges? What if they do walk away, but also walk away from the whole shebang? So they end the transition deal early as well. Now, I don't know, the transition period, I should say, sorry. I don't know how easy they can do that. I mean, can they do that? I don't know. I don't know what the facility is to do that. Legally, I'm talking about here, legally. But let's say that they could. And this isn't necessarily a terrible outcome, all things considered either. It sounds crazy what you're on about, Phil. The bottom line is we are going to face the no-deal Brexit anyway. So once you accept that we are going to face the no-deal Brexit anyway, it has been noted that if you are going to crash out of the EU without a deal, that January, which is where it's scheduled for at the moment, is actually the worst time of year that you could possibly want to do this. As such, if it's going to happen anyway, why not make it a less terrible time of year, where there has been 6 months less damage to the economy, as well as an added little bonus, if we can call it that. It also means that people will get to see for themselves the reality of a no-deal Brexit 6 months earlier, but at a time when it's not going to be as severe. On balance, a no-deal Brexit in summer is better than one in January. And it's not like we're even going to be better prepared with an extra 6 months. The government have had years to get ready and have done nothing. No upgrades to ports have been made, no expansion of customs officials, nothing at all apart from wealthy Brexiteers making out like bandits and then squirreling their ill-gotten gains outside of the country. In fact, just to highlight how poorly we've been preparing, the government has said that it will begin preparations for a no deal now. I mean, I know I said that they haven't been doing any preparations up to now, but they did. They've been spending billions, boasting of spending billions on no deal preparations. Now they're saying, we're going to start preparations now. So what were they doing before then? I mean, we know what they were doing before then. They were giving those billions of quid to their mates. But there you go. And how are they going to do this? Well, apparently they're going to recruit and train tens of thousands of customs officials. I mean, that we need them. Absolutely need them. But they're going to do it in a few months. Okay, right. That will work, I think. No? No. And then no word on the physical infrastructure, unless I missed it, because that needs happening. You need something. You need somewhere for these tens of thousands of extra customs officials to ply their trade. We need somewhere to not so much funnel the lorry through as to let them come through without 17-mile tailbacks. And no word on that. Are they going to suddenly massively expand the major ports, including at Dover, in the next few months as well? But anyway, there we go. That is the current state of play. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, then please click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.